Hey everyone, it's Deja from CrochetEverAfter.com. Today we are making this pocket scarf. It's a scarf with the pockets built in. It's super easy and really fast using super bulky weight yarn. So it's very comfy cozy. You can download the pattern below and it'll give you the specific yarn and yardage requirements and the hook that you're going to use. And I also give you some tips on how you can change the size. So if you want to make it for like a little kid, you can. So download the pattern, grab some supplies, and we'll get started. 160 foundation single crochets. Now this can be adjusted for your height. So once we finish this first row, you can put it on, because it's foundation single crochet and not a foundation chain, you can adjust the length. So depending on what kind of yarn you're using, you can make it longer, you can make it shorter. You're going to want to put it on and then fold it up, because you're going to want to fold it for the length of your hands so that your hands fit in there comfortably. You can use like a safety pin. I'm going to go ahead and make a slip knot. You can use safety pins to kind of hold the yarn together into kind of a pocket shape, and then just kind of put your hands inside, or put your hands where they would go because there's no pocket yet, and see how you like the length. So you can adjust it as you go for whatever size person you're going to make it for. I have a really in-depth video on foundation single crochet. If you need to take it a little bit slower, I'll kind of explain what I'm doing here so that you can get the hang of it. It's pretty simple if you think about what you're making. If you remember what you make, you can do a foundation single crochet quite easily. The first thing you're going to do, because it's a single crochet foundation chain, is we're going to chain 2. Okay, so we're going to pull up a loop. This kind of looks like a single crochet where we have 2 loops, but remember, first we need to create our foundation chain. So we're going to have a foundation chain and single crochets. So I need to yarn over and pull through just the first loop, and that makes the very first chain of my foundation chain. Now I have 2 loops again. Now I'm going to create the single crochet that goes on top of it. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops. Now remember, this was my foundation chain, this little loop right here. So I need to go inside. If you turn it sideways, you'll kind of begin to see a little bottom V here, a little foundation chain. So I need to go under both of those loops because I need to create my next chain in single crochet. So I go under this first loop here and the second loop. And I'm going to show you something that I suggested to somebody that helped them find those loops if it's a little difficult for you. But I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, pull up another loop. I'm going to make my next foundation chain by yarning over and pulling through the first loop. And then yarn over, and I'm going to pull through the next 2 to make my single crochet. Again, turn it sideways. You can start to see the V's forming of our bottom foundation chain. Go through both of those loops. Pull up your loop. So one thing you can do, if it's a little difficult, pull your chain through. So now you have your chain, and you'll see that I have the chain visible. Let me grab this. Just slip a stitch marker through those loops while you have them visible. Or you can just pull it through that first loop you pulled through so that you remember I need to go through that loop. So yarn over, pull through 2. Here's my stitch marker, so that reminds me that's my loop. And the one right to the left of it is the other bottom loop of my foundation chain. Splitting my plies. Again, pull up a loop, pull through the first loop to make your foundation chain, pull through the 2 loops to make your single crochet. So if we look at this, you can see that we're starting to get our first row of single crochets and we have our foundation chain. If we look at the bottom, you can see it's starting to form now. You start to see the V's. So that gives us a nice edge to our scarf. So again, you have the 2 loops. Those were part of your single crochet. So if you put it down, you pick it up, and you're like, oh my goodness, is this the loop I go under? Just look, this is where you made your single crochet. So if we turn it sideways, you can see that we have a bottom. This is coming from the top. So you can see 2 legs in the top. So this is not the first loop. This first loop is not the one you want to work into. You want to work into the next loop. Also, if you turn it sideways, you can see that V that is there. So I'm going to go under both of those, pull through the first chain, pull through the single crochet. Again, so skip that first loop attached to my yarn, go to the next one, pull up, pull through the first, pull through the second. So it's going to create a nice stretchy fabric for us, not a super tight foundation row. You do as many as you need to do. Remember, you can use your stitch markers every 10, 20 rows, 10, 20 stitches to keep track so you don't have to keep counting them. If you're new and you're not sure where to count here, remember both sides have the V's, but where your tail is, the tail's at the bottom, so that's your foundation chain. So this top part is your single crochets. Turn your work and count the V's. So they look like the letter V stacked on top of each other. Count those for how many stitches you have. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 so far. This is our beginning chain, so that doesn't count. So head on with your foundation single crochets, and then we'll meet up to do row 2, because it's technically row 1. Alright, I've got my little snake foundation single crochet row 1 here. You can see my little various stitch markers, so I have it for every 20 stitches so that it's easy to count up to 160. So I checked my length. I like the length around my neck. Make sure you check your length if you like it, if you want it longer or shorter. I want it to be just right around my neck. I don't want it to wrap around because that just seems like it's going to strangle me if I have my hands in my pockets. So I want it just around my neck with the pockets. So think about that. If you want it to wrap around your neck at all, you'll want to add some length. If you want the pockets a little bit higher, you'll want to shorten it some. But that's the great thing about foundation single crochet, because you can just keep going to make it longer, or if you want to make it shorter, you just start pulling out. So if you make a mistake or if you need to remove stitches, just remember you need to get back to having one loop at the top here. So right now we've got a couple loops. Just keep pulling until you only have one loop left and you've decreased by one stitch. So I'm going to put that stitch back, and we're going to start round row 2. So remember, this is where our single crochets are along the top, where our loop's coming out of. So we just turn our work and we're going to chain 1. And because our chain 1s don't count as a stitch and we're going to be doing single crochets for this round, we're going to work into our very first stitch, or the last stitch of the row that we just did. The only difference is we're not going under both loops. We're going to make kind of a ribbed fabric right now by going just through the back loop. So when you're looking at your stitches, you kind of have like loops in the front. Don't get confused. This is all part of the stitches, this back side of your single crochet. Turn your work sideways if you need help. Look for those stacked V's and then go into just that back loop. So an easy way to do that is to go kind of straight down the middle and kind of diagonally, so kind of at a 45-degree angle. See my hook going, and that catches it very easily. So I pull up a loop and single crochet. Again, I don't even have to turn my work, I just know that I can hit it with the 45-degree angle and I catch just that loop. And this is going to create a little bit of a rib. We're going to do a little bit of a rib and then change it up with some double crochet. But doing these single crochets first allows us to make this scarf as long or as short as we want, because we don't have to worry about compensating for the double crochet height. So work all the way across in the back loop. Once you get to your stitch marker, if you're using them, just pull them out. You don't need them anymore because everything is going to be just the same stitch across. It's just different stitches each row. So keep going all the way across in the back loop, and then we'll meet up at the end to start row 3. I'm down at the end of row 2. When you're working into this very last stitch, remember you had this original chain 2, so you don't work into that. So when you turn your work, you can see that very visible V that you're going to work into. So you're just going to do your last single crochet in the back loop, then you're going to turn, and then for row 3 it's just going to be the same thing. Chain 1 and then single crochet in the back loop only, get that first stitch and head all the way across and then the next row we'll do something different. So keep going in the back loop only for this row, and we'll meet up for row 4. All right, on the last stitch of the row, make sure again we have that chain 1 at the beginning. We don't want to work into that. Now we're ready for row 4. So now we're going to do something different. We're going to do double crochets. Oops, moving my camera here. My tail. We're going to do double crochets across, but we're going to do it in both loops, and we're going to start our row a little different. So normally with a double crochet you would chain 3 and then you would double crochet in the next stitch. So this chain 3 would count as a stitch, and then you would work into the one after. The problem is you get this big gap. It's not very pretty on your finished project having these big gaps wherever your double crochet rows start. So instead we're going to do something called a tall chain. So what it is you're going to pull out your loop to about the height of a double crochet. It's a little bit better to go a little shorter than a little longer because we want it to be as hidden as possible. We're going to lock that in with one more chain. So just yarn over and pull through. Keep it nice and tight. Now we're going to do our double crochet in the very first stitch. So we're not skipping a stitch. We're not counting this as a stitch. We're going in and doing a double crochet. Remember, go through both loops. And what that does is it creates a completely closed gap. There's just a little bit extra. It's kind of like one length of yarn on the end, but once you get through, it's almost like our chain 1s. It's just a slight bump that's not very noticeable, and it's way better looking than the big gap that we had. So again, we go through both loops, so make sure you're getting through both of the V's when you're doing your double crochet. And this is what we're going to do all the way across. So just keep on double crocheting, and then we'll come back and go over the pattern repeat that we'll be doing for the rest of the scarf. Alright, we're at the very last stitch of the row, so we're going to do one more double crochet. And this is the pattern repeat, so this is what we're going to do across the scarf. So we'll have 3 rows of single crochet and 1 row of double crochet. Difference being is the first row of single crochet is going to be through both loops, so both sides of our double crochet will have been worked through both loops, and then the other 2 rows of the single crochet will be worked in the back loop only. So we'll get this kind of ridge going on both sides of our double crochet. So for the row after the double crochet, we go through both loops, then you're going to do 2 rows in the back loop only, and then 1 row of the double crochet through both loops. So let's do one more repeat of that, and we'll come back and look at the scarf. So go ahead and do single, 2 singles in the back loop and 1 double, and then we'll meet up again. Okay, I finished another 4 rows, or a full repeat of the scarf, so you can see how it's starting to shape up. So we're going to do another 4 rows, so another row of single crochet, and then 2 rows of single crochet in the back loop, and then one row of double crochet. So go ahead and work on that, and then we'll come back after those 4 rows to see what we're going to do next. Alright, we have our next section of the 4 row repeat done. So we are almost done with the scarf. Now we're just going to do the first 3 rows one more time. So the single crochet rows, just to even it out, because we have 3 single crochet rows on this side, so we're going to do 3 on this side. So the same pattern, we're just going to single crochet in each stitch, both loops on the first one, and then we'll do 2 rows of the back loop single crochet, and then after that we'll come back and we will make the pockets, and you'll see how we're going to join the yarn to create those. So do those last 3 rows for your scarf, and then we'll meet up to finish our pockets. Alright, I finished the whole scarf. Still have my yarn attached, but I'm going to fasten that off so we can start doing the pockets. Just let me fasten this off real quick, then we'll talk about how we're going to make the pocket. Okay, so before we make our pocket, we need to decide what side we want showing on the front of our scarf, which is going to determine what side is showing on our pocket because we're going to be folding this upwards. But I'm going to keep it this way. So I want the right side facing out and I want the wrong side to be the pocket. So what I need to do is to actually flip it. I want the wrong side facing me and I'm going to flip up the right side before I make my pocket. Why am I doing this? Because once I make my pocket with the join that we're going to use, I'm going to flip it back to the right side, and that way I don't have a funky seam showing along my sides when I join this. So whichever side you want showing on the outside of your scarf, flip it over to the other side to make your pocket. Again, so I'm going to have the right side facing out, so I'm going to flip it over to the wrong side, and I'm going to flip up my pocket to make it. For the pocket measurement, decide how big you want your pocket to be. So depending on the size of your scarf, so if you're making the same size as me, then you might want to make the same pocket. If you're making it for like a kid and you want it shorter and smaller for a child's hand, then you might want to reduce it a little. But my hand is about 7 inches long, so from my palm to the top of my finger, I have about 7 inches. Let me see if you can see that. It's about 7 inches, so I'm going to make my pocket about 7 inches long. So I'm just laying my tape measure at the end of the scarf and going all the way to 7. I'm not making it like super duper, you know, exact, but close enough. And then what I want to do is I want to line up my stitches. So I want to make sure that I have the same amount of stitches going all the way across and I don't have a extra stitch down here that I can't work into. So I'm just going to use some of these locking stitch markers to kind of hold my place so I can check this out. So I have one, because we're going to use a single crochet join, so we need some loops to go into for every single one. So I want to make sure that the V stitch here matches up with a V stitch here. So I'm just going to place these about every 5 or 6. I have one. Here's a match, here's a match, here's a match, here's a match, here's a match. I'll place one here. These locking stitch markers are great for seams because you can pull them out as you go as you're working to keep them lined up better. We have here, 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 here. Do another one. And if we get it good on this side, then we should be lined up on the other side, but we still want to check. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have 2 that are my fold. So that's where I'm going to start my join, and then I have loops to work into all the way across. So let's grab some yarn. Now I am starting on this side of the scarf on purpose. So start on the side that when you work this way, you're going to come to the top of your scarf, okay? Because we are going to create the seam all the way across. We're going to create an edging for the top of our pocket so it's pretty and not just these ugly edges. And then we're going to join these together going down. So it's just going to make a big old 3-sided square. So that way we don't have to join a lot of yarn. So put a slip knot on your hook. Come over to your thing. If you need to, double check again for your stitches lining up to where you should insert your hook. But I'm going to insert my hook under both loops of this stitch, those 2 corner stitches that are folded together, and that stitch. So that's going to be my very first stitch. So grab my yarn wherever it is, all tangled up here, and I'm going to slip stitch it to join. So I'm going to bring my yarn over the top, grab it, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on my hook. And then I'm going to tighten that down really good. So that's my corner. Now I'm going to start single crocheting. Doesn't matter if it's squished down, so you don't need to do a chain 1, you can just start working. So I'm going to go into that same place again just to give it a nice thick join, and then we're going to go into each stitch that we come to. So you can either go one by one, going through both loops here and going through both loops on the next stitch. Am I going the wrong one? I am going the wrong one. next stitch there. Make sure you're lining them up. So I was about to go into the one that I already just joined, but you can see I have a loop coming out of it right here. So make sure that you're lining your stuff up. That's why those stitch markers are good, because I can see each of these stitches that I need to go into. So I'm going under both of those loops. You can just go into one loop if you want. That'll give it a different look when you flip it to the outside. So if I just go into these outside loops here, it'll give it a little ridge with these inside loops that don't get worked into. Totally up to you, but I want a nice tight join, so I'm going to go through both loops and just tighten it down as you go. So this is the one time where you want to yank on your stitches. You want the single crochets to be nice and tight so that your seam is put together well. If you don't tighten it down, then it could just look kind of, when you open it up, it's going to kind of pull apart like a regular single crochet. So again, go under both loops and just kind of turn it and look if you need to find them. Both loops, yarn over, pull up, single crochet, tighten down. So we're going to keep doing that. If you have some stitch markers in there, you can also use safety pins. You can use, there's plastic needles that are used for seaming that are completely plastic that you can use. These are kind of nice because they don't fall out until you want them to come out. And you can also, I just did this side, but once I get over to this side, I'll probably use them again to make sure I line up. So I'm going to finish, I'm going to get to the end of the stitches, which is this very last stitch marker I have, and then we'll meet up so we can do this side. Okay, I'm at my very last stitch over here, so I'm going to pull up a stitch marker. I'm going to do my single crochet in this last one. Then we're going to make a turn. Okay, so now to work along our scarf edge to make our pocket look nice, we need to turn our work from where we are now. So we're going to now not work into this part of the scarf. We're only going to work into the edge of the bottom of our scarf technically, because this is the end of our scarf. We just folded it up. So we need to make a turn. So we need to do 2 more single crochets in that same stitch that we just made our very last join in. So ignore this tail and go in. So you'll see the top, let me see if I can get this better here. So here's the top V that we worked into. So you just go into that hole. You can see the hole. Let's see if I can get like a white background so you can see it a little bit better. So everything's in the way. Okay, so see, this is the top of our stitch and there's a hole right there. We want to go 2 more times in there so we can make our turn. So we're going to do 1, and then I'm just going to do it on the other side of this tail so it'll turn a little nicer. We'll weave in that tail at the end. Alright, now we're going to work along the edge. So it's going to be a little awkward because it's facing us, but it's also kind of the inside of our scarf. So we're going to lay this part down and then lift up the edge so we can work into it. Alright, so when you're working along an edge that doesn't have stitches, you need to single crochet kind of evenly. Let me see if I can get this with a white background. You want to single crochet evenly across into your stitches. Now one thing we have to take into consideration on this pattern is that we have single crochet in the back loop, which causes this ribbing. So if I put one on this side and one on this side of my single crochet ribbing, it's gonna pull it apart, and I'm gonna end up kind of with a little bit of a fan effect on our edge or this pocket. So when you get to these ribs, try to only put 1 single crochet in it. So see how I kind of have this nice big open space here? Put 1 there and then come over kind of far. Don't go into this next stitch. Come over far so that this will stay together so you don't have it pulling apart. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll start and I'll show you again. Okay, so the very first stitch that I come to is a rib. So I want to do 1 stitch in one side of the rib, and also with the single crochets across the edge, do them normally, don't tighten them down unless you want to, but for the design's sake, for what I'm doing, I'm not tightening down the single crochets along this edge, just the seam. So I'm going to skip this side of my single crochets because I want the rib to stay closed and not have a fanned out shape. So if I put one here, it's going to force my rib apart and it's going to make my pocket start to spread apart. So if I want my pocket in line with my scarf, I need to shorten up my stitches a little bit. So I'm going to skip this row of single crochet and I'm going to come over here to this hole here and do a single crochet. So that's going to keep that rib closed. So you can see it's not opening up at all. Then when you come to double crochets, usually you want to do about 2 single crochets in each of the rows. So I have a nice little hole right here I can work into. Then I'll go kind of in the middle of this double crochet. And then one over here. So remember when we did the double crochet on each side of the double crochet, we did regular single crochets. So we only have about 1 rib per in between each row of double crochet. So here comes another one. So I'm going to do one in this nice large hole that's for me. Then I'm going to skip this whole side of the rib and come over to the next hole that I see. Here's another nice hole. You'll see a pattern from each row that you can work into, so as long as you kind of stick to that pattern, you know you're in the right spot. So you can see I have my big hole again from my rib. Then I have a nice little hole here after my rib. A nice little hole right here before my double crochet. This one I'm just going to work kind of right in the center here of the double crochet. Bring it down a little more. And there's another little hole here right after the double crochet. Another rib at the end. And now I'm at the other side of my work. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1 single crochet here. And then we're going to do a turn again, but first I want to line up my pockets so that I can start working into those. So these are my tails from a yarn join, so I'm going to move those over there. Then I'm going to place this together. So I want to line up my stitches again. The rest of this scarf out of the way. Pull my tail a little long so I don't lose it. So again, I want to line up these stitches. So this time I'm going to start from this end because I know I have 2 that should be my bottom. So this looks like it's like right in the center right here. So I'm just going to start right there. You can also count how many single crochets you did along this edge to make sure that you're exact. So it might vary for you from me. So here's those, then those line up, those line up, those line up, those line up. Let me add a stitch marker. Okay, lining up again. Another stitch marker. Almost at the end here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do 1 more stitch marker. This chunky yarn is hard for these stitch markers. Alright, and then we have this one and this one. Here is my tail. So I have 2 right here lining up perfectly. So when you look at it, just turn it a little bit to find your V's if it's not sticking up. So this is with that foundation single crochet. It helps because we have a nice V on both sides of our fabric. If we would have done just a regular foundation chain, it would have been a little bit harder to seam at the end. And it also gives us the ability not to have to put an edging on the sides of our scarf because we have the nice V edge, put it in the center, V edge along both sides of our scarf. So let's start this side. So it's just a little different because now we're going from the top to the bottom, but it's the same concept. We're going to do 1 more single crochet here to make our turn. And then our third and final single crochet to make our turn is actually going to be worked into the loops. So we're going to come all the way over here because we need to start on this side, just like regular kind of single crochet. We go in through the front, then we're going to pick up the 2 loops over here, a little turned here. I can get them, there we go. Then we're going to single crochet together. And this one we're going to tighten down. Oops. All right, now we have our edging again. So we're gonna go under both here, yarn over, pull through, single crochet, tighten down. And we're gonna do the same thing all the way to the end to where we will fasten off. So just make sure you're finding your V's, so you can see the V's here. So just go under both of those V's. These are a little bit different because they're the foundation chain, or if you were on the foundation chain, depending on which side of the scarf you started on, that might have been the one that you just did. But they're a little bit slightly different from like a regular stitch. So you just gotta twist them a little to find the top of them. So I'm gonna head all the way to the end and then we'll fasten off and I'll get you started on the last pocket. All right, here I am at the last stitch of this pocket. So I'm gonna take out my stitch marker, go under both of those sides and single crochet, tighten that down, and then I'm going to fasten this off, and we will flip our pocket inside out so you can, or right side out technically, so you can see how it looks. So just pull it. You'll be weaving in the ends normally before you do that, but we'll just look at how it looks beforehand. So just stick your hand in there to pop the edges out. All right. Now you can see you have this nice pocket with this nice edge along the top, so it looks finished. On the side, we got a nice thick side, so you can put even phones and other things in here besides just your hands, and it's completely sealed off so you're not going to lose anything. So that's why we do those single crochets right in the corner, because it gives us a nice sealed off edge so we don't have any holes. All right, so one thing I'm going to do before I start the other side of my scarf is I'm going to count how many stitches I actually worked into on this side, because I want to fold my scarf the same amount of stitches on the other side so it's symmetrical rather than just by going by the measurement. So I'm looking at how many stitches I did from this end to where the scarf side was last joined. So you can see that I have a stitch right here that went into the scarf. So I have one here. I'm going to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So I have 17. Technically it's going to be like 16 because those two are a little squished. So I'm going to count 17 and then fold it, and that should give me my 2 stitches here at the bottom. And then we will do the same thing on the other side of my scarf. Now remember, the way, because it's upside down, you're like, which side is the right side? Just look at your other pocket. This should be folded in on the same side as your other pocket, so that when it's flipped out, it's flipped over and everything's facing the right way. So start counting your stitches. So remember, I'm doing 16 and folding it on the 17th. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, you count your V's if you're wondering what I'm counting. If you're brand new, look at the top of your stitches, count those V's. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So these 2 are the ones that I'm folding it on. So I'm going to put a little stitch marker right there, going through 17 here and 17 here, so it folds. Then I can do my lineup again. So I can go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, put a stitch marker. And now I'm going to have perfectly symmetrical pockets because I'm doing the same amount of stitches in each one. Stitch, 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 stitch. Now I cannot start on this side, because if I start on this side and I join right here and I work this way, I'm going to run into the end of my scarf. But I have lots of stitch markers, so I'm just getting ready so that I don't have to mess with it when I come back to the other side. So I'm going to flip this over, because this is the side and I need to flip my scarf completely over, unless I'm going to work left-handed. Okay, and I'm going to be working along this side again, doing my turns, working the single crochets and coming back across again. So again, if you have stitch markers, use them. Ran out of my locking ones. So you can count this side for the 16 to make sure you're in the right spot before you start stitching up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I would have been off a little if I hadn't looked at that correctly. I got all kinds of stitch markers. So here's one. Okay, match up. Oops. Alright, you can see our scarf is nice and straight, so we are ready to finish. Where is my tail? So many tails everywhere, I can't find the actual yarn. Okay, so we're going to do a slip knot again. We'll just go over the beginning again, and then we'll work on our own. So I'm going through those 2 stitches where the stitch marker is, both of the top loops. Yarn over, pull through, oops, I bumped a single crochet, slip stitch first, then single crochet back in that same hole. Okay, and then we're going to start doing our stitches. Let's go ahead and work along the whole thing again. Look at the first pocket if you need help, remembering what to do along the top edge, and then we'll meet up and look at our finished scarf. Okay, we finished up the scarf and woven all the ends, so now you can see how it looks finished. You can see the front view and then the side view of the pockets, so that single crochet just made a nice edge to the top of it. So now you can put your hands, your cell phone, you can fit a lot of stuff in this big gigantic scarf, but it's nice and cozy. So that is the scarf. If you have any questions, leave them below, and thank you for watching.